There was no temperature inversion. We got in touch with Navy Balloon Project Center at the University of Minnesota. That gave us an exact schedule of balloons released from that center. We got similar information from every other point where weather balloons are released through Air Force Balloon Plotting Center at Lowry Field, Denver. We contacted Air Force Weather for wind conditions and velocity at the altitude of known balloons. A precise computation of balloons in the air and known wind conditions definitely removed balloons from the picture. We checked with Flight Service to determine if any aircraft were in the vicinity on the bearing at that time. There were no aircraft.
And still this thing was up there all the time, being observed by various personnel from airfields all over that area?
Correct, and they were seeing it. We checked with our contract astronomer at a leading university in the locality and gave the astronomer the angle of elevation and bearing of the object. Remember, the object was observed at an angle of 15 degrees above the horizon, and I told you that was important. It proved to be the conclusive factor. Our astronomer reported that at the time of the observation, the planet Jupiter was 15 degrees above the horizon, and on the angle of elevation and bearing of the object. There's no doubt about it. What all these people saw was Jupiter.
What made the light flash?
Atmospheric conditions, the same conditions that make the stars appear to twinkle.
You people really go into these things.
We try. In over 80% of the cases, we come up with the correct answers. We don't get the correct answers in all the cases.
What about the motion picture made by this Navy man, Newhouse?
We're working on that.
How does it look?
Impressive.
Can I see it?
It's being analyzed.
When the film is available, will I be able to take a look at it?
As soon as analysis is completed, you'll see it. Satisfied?
Yeah. How long will that take?
About a week. We're doing an exhaustive check on the Newhouse stuff. Really putting it through the ringer. When we're through, we'll forward a print to the Director of Intelligence with a complete report of our analysis.
Fill me in on Newhouse. Would you consider him a qualified observer?
He rates as a top flight observer, an extremely competent one. Immediately upon getting word of his sighting, we dispatched an investigator from Travis Air Force Base to interrogate Newhouse. The exact date of his sighting was July 2nd at 11 a.m., Mountain Standard Time.
I was driving on U.S. Highway 30 South with my wife and our son Delbert and our daughter Ann. We were on our way from Washington, D.C. to Portland, Oregon on vacation before reporting to my new duty station at the Aviation Supply Depot, Naval Supply Center, Oakland, California. About 7 miles after we passed through Tremont in Utah, my wife noticed a group of objects in the sky which she could not identify. I pulled over to the side of the road, stopped, got out, looked up and saw the objects. There were about 12 of them in a rough formation proceeding in a westerly direction. They were like nothing I'd ever seen before, although I've logged some 2,000 hours in the air. They were identical in appearance.
How would you describe these objects?
Like two saucers, one inverted over the other. I had no means of judging the altitude. It appeared to me to be about the size of B-29s at 10,000 feet.
Did you photograph them immediately?
I watched the objects for a few moments before getting my camera out of the suitcase. Then I lost more time getting film out of the second suitcase and loading the camera. When I first saw the objects, they were almost overhead. By the time I had the camera ready to go, they had moved to a considerably greater distance.
What kind of a camera did you use?
A 16mm Bell & Howell Filmo Auto Loadmaster with the 3-lens turret. I selected a 3-inch lens and set it on f8 and focused at infinity.
Did you think of using slow motion?
No, the camera was set on 16 frames per second, and in the excitement of the moment, I didn't think to shoot at a greater rate, although that would have improved the coverage. I centered the viewfinder on the objects and made the first shot. Then I decided that if the sky were darker, the objects would show better. So I stopped the lens down to f16 and continued photographing. This proved to be a mistake, as the quality of the film would have been better had I left it at f8.
Did these objects remain together in a group at all times?
No, toward the end, one object reversed its course and proceeded away from the rest of the group. I held the camera still and allowed this single object to pass through the field of view, picking it up again later in its course.
Did this single object return to the rest of the group?
No, I allowed it to pass through the field of view of the camera 2 or 3 times, and then it disappeared.
In what direction?
Over the eastern horizon.
What did you do then?
I turned, swinging the camera just in time to see the rest of the group disappear over the western horizon.
What was the weather?
The weather was bright and cloudless.
Visibility good?
The visibility was excellent.
How does this film you shot compare with what you saw with your naked eye? You have studied the film.
Yes, I've studied it. I'm very disappointed. The film falls far short of showing what I saw with the naked eye, due to the delay in getting the camera started and my error in exposure. If I'd had this camera in the seat beside me, loaded and ready to go, there'd be no need for questions. The Air Force would have the answer.
What is your full name, please?
Delbert Clement Newhouse.
And you are on active duty with the Navy?
Yes, sir, I am.
What is your official Navy rank?
My title is Chief Photographer. I'm a commissioned warrant officer, United States Navy.
How long have you been in the service?
21 years.
Now, is there anything you can add to the description of these objects?
They had a bright silvery color.
Can you describe some particular detail?
They had a metallic appearance. They seemed to be made of some kind of polished metal.
The Newhouse film, as I told you, is presently under analysis. Sergeant, would you get me the Fargo case? The Fargo sighting was October 1st, 1948. A National Guard lieutenant, thank you, a National Guard lieutenant was about to land his F-51 at Fargo Airport.
Captain Ruppelt gave me the details from the record. The pilot, after a routine patrol flight, was cleared by the tower to land when he asked,
Anything in the way?
There's a Piper Cub below you. Nothing else in the air.
I see the Piper Cub. I see another light about 1,000 yards ahead of me. It looks like the tail light of a plane.
I can see you, but I can't see the light you're observing.
the pilot told the tower he could see it and was going to close in and try to make identification.
I can see it clearly now. A small white light. It keeps blinking on and off.
As he approached it, the blinking light became clear and steady. Suddenly, it pulled into a sharp left bank.
I think this thing is going to make a pass on the tower.
I see it now. I see it.
The pilot dived on the light, and although he brought his manifold pressure up to 60 inches, he reported,
I can't seem to catch up with the thing. It's gaining altitude and has just made an impossible turn. A 90-degree turn to the left.
You're right. It's gaining altitude on you. And it's still in a very tight left turn.
by that time they were at 7,000 feet, when, suddenly, the light made a 90-degree right turn.
It's headed straight at me.
The light passed directly over your canopy at, I estimate, about 500 feet.
The object suddenly shot straight into the air. The pilot followed it to 14,000 feet when his plane went into a power stall. The object disappeared. The chase had lasted approximately 27 minutes.
The officer in the tower was the airport traffic controller. The lieutenant was an instructor for the French during the Second World War. He said he was sure there was an intelligence behind the movements of the lights. He stated, too, that no earthborn pilot could have withstood the G-factor inherent in the object's turns and speed without blacking out.
Was there radar at the field?
No, there wasn't.
Too bad. Radar would have made it airtight.
Not necessarily.
I thought a radar return was indisputable evidence.
No, it isn't.
Are you a radar expert?
No, I'm not, but I have one on tap. Give me extension 361. We have a team of 3 radar analysts here in Air Phenomenon Branch. I want to talk to Win Swanson. All radar reports received here pass through this radar analysis division. Swanson? I have a man here from the Pentagon. He's cleared. Wants to know about radar. Okay. The field's socked in solid with fog, but he'll take you over to GCA. This is ground control approach.
With zero visibility, GCA picks up the aircraft coming in, and by means of the pips on their scope, can talk them into a landing. Now this scope here gives the aircraft in the area. This scope here tells you whether you're to the right or the left of the landing strip, and that one there tells you whether you're too high or too low. Now the next scope is the same as this one, except that it gives you more accuracy.
Patterson, GCA. This is Air Force 2162, past Fairfield, fan marker inbound. Request landing instructions.
There you can see him on the screen. Now you can track him all the way in. He's flying blind.
Steer right to heading 20 degrees and begin descent to 1,500 feet.
This is Air Force 162, steering 20 degrees, descending to 1,500. Over.
Air Force 162, the weather at Patterson Field is 100 feet ragged ceiling. Visibility 1/2 mile. Light rain. Wind southwest 6. Altimeter 998.
If you can see it on radar, there can be no question about misinterpretation.
In this case, no. These are good solid blips.
This is Air Force 162, roger on the weather and runway. Over.
Air Force 162, steer left to heading 35, turning downwind leg. Range 8 miles south. Over.
This is Air Force 162, steering 35. Over.
Sometimes a temperature inversion will cause trouble. Ionized clouds or equipment malfunction will cause false blips.
Can you tell a false blip from one made by aircraft?
Yes, any experienced operator can tell in a minute or so.
Air Force 162, steer left to heading 215. This will put you on final approach.
This is Air Force 162, roger. Steering 215. Over.
Air Force 162, this is your final director. How do you read me? Over.
This is Air Force 162. You are loud and clear. Over.
Air Force 162, roger. Your range is 7 miles. Slow aircraft to descending speed. Make final flap setting. Maintain altitude of 1,200. Heading 215. Do not acknowledge any further transmission unless unable to comply. If you do not hear GCA for any 5-second interval, climb to 1,000 feet on a heading of 125 and contact approach control. Steer right to heading 210, range 5 miles. You are now approaching glide path. Start normal rate of descent at 600 feet per minute. Entry to glide path good. Steer left to heading 212, range 4 miles. Go above glide path 10, 15, 25 feet high. Increase your rate of descent slightly. Heading 212. Holding you on the center line. Holding 2 feet high on glide path. Check that descent. Steer right to heading of 213. Range now 3 miles. Holding glide path very well. Go below glide path 10, 20, 30 feet. Level off slightly. Steer right to heading 214. Coming back nicely to glide path. 25, 20, 15 feet low. Heading 214 had you lined up with the center line. Range 2 miles. Holding 15 feet low on glide path. Bring it up slightly. 10, 5. Now on glide path. Range 1.5 miles. Heading 214 on glide path. Steer left to heading 213 over the end of runway on center line. On glide path as you approach point of touchdown. Touchdown in 3 seconds. If you cannot see the runway, pull up and climb to 1,000 feet, heading 125.
Safe at home. Well, that's it. coffee?
Yes. What exactly is your job here, Swanson?
I'm one of a group of 3 radar specialists employed by the Air Force. Reports of radar contacts of unidentified objects are sent in to us from all over the world for analysis.
How long have you been in Air Force intelligence?
2 years.
Ever come across any cases you couldn't solve?
We have unsolved cases, yes. Cases where good solid blips appeared and no known objects in the area. Then, too, we have cases of fantastic speed.
Exactly what do you mean by fantastic speed?
I mean speeds greater than any achieved by man.
How much greater?
Thousands of miles per hour.
Thousands of miles. What's your idea of what they are?
All I can say is unknown. You must remember that I've been restricted to only radar contacts. I have no experience with visual contacts.
What do you think about the chances of these objects having intelligence behind their control?
All I can say is I have an open mind.
What do you think about the theory of interplanetary source?
I have an open mind, period.
I spent a full week in Dayton. I had hoped to see the Newhouse film before returning to Washington, but it was still under analysis by the Wright Field Photo Lab. When the analysis was completed, the film was taken by an Air Force courier and hand-carried to Washington to be viewed by the Director General of Air Force Intelligence.
It is. All set, Major?
Yes, sir.
Air Technical Intelligence has reported that this film could not be produced under simulated conditions.
Let's go. There'll be several feet of blank film before the pictures come on.
The film, as Newhouse had predicted, was in bad condition, but the chief interest was in movement, speed, and light source. After a moment, the general asked to see it again.
How about that?
Those were the only words spoken in the room. How about that? A few days later, Major Fournet had some news for me.
We got the analysis of the Newhouse film from Air Materiel Command.
What does it show?
Not birds, not balloons, not aircraft, not faked. With the telephoto lens used, weather balloons within 5 miles distance could have been determined on the film. At a greater distance than 5 miles, they could not attain the speeds calculated. Within a 5-mile range, an aircraft of 40-foot wingspan could have been clearly determined. In excess of 5 miles, the speeds of the objects are greater than aircraft could achieve, except in a straight-line speed run. No bird is sufficiently reflective as to cause the film to react as strongly as it is done.
If they're not birds, not balloons, or aircraft, and the film isn't faked, what can these things be?
The official conclusion is unknowns.
The Newhouse film was only the overture. A few minutes before 1 a.m., July 20th, 1952, the curtain on the first act of the Washington drama went up. The unknowns moved in for the first time over the national capital. I had always regarded myself as a man with an intuitive nose for news. So, through the first Washington sighting, while the saucers hovered over the city, I was in bed, sleeping soundly through it all. When I reached my desk that morning, we were flooded with newspaper queries. Telephones were jangling throughout the day. Irate editors from all over the country were insistently demanding more specific information. Newsmen from the wire services, reporters from local and out-of-town newspapers were hemming me in, belaboring me with questions for which I had no answers. For the first couple of hours, we at the press desk had a terrible time getting the story straight ourselves. But bit by bit, I managed to piece it together. There had been both visual and radar contacts. Andrews Field, the Air Force installation, had radar returns similar to those on the CAA radar. Jets had been scrambled in an attempt to make an intercept of the UFOs, but they had not been successful. The week after the Washington saucer sighting was a mad, chaotic one. The story was headlined from coast to coast. As the PIO man assigned to answer saucer questions, I had been under an incessant barrage of inquiries day and night by newsmen. I could get no sleep, no rest at all. Among other things, the Washington Daily News published an interview with Harry G. Barnes, Senior Air Traffic Controller, Civil Aeronautics Administration. Barnes stated, "There is no other conclusion I can reach but that for 6 hours on the morning of the 20th of July, there were at least 10 unidentifiable objects moving above Washington. They were not ordinary aircraft. I could tell that by their movement on the scope. I can safely deduce that they performed gyrations which no known aircraft could perform. By this I mean that our scope showed that they could make right-angle turns and complete reversals of flight. Nor, in my opinion, could any natural phenomena account for these spots on our radar." Then, exactly a week later, it really broke loose. It was the night of July 26, 1952. At 10